Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. If you're wondering why I have a glass full of water with a straw, it's not for me to quench my thirst, but to perform a demonstration about hydraulics. Let's talk about CLI-42 cartridges. These are the ones for the Pro-100. Again, if you have one and you are already considering or already refilling these, you're going to want to watch this. Okay, so originally, what you end up with is either an empty cartridge. Again, this has not been modified in any way just yet. It ran empty, you removed it, and now you're wondering, well, should I replace it with an OEM cartridge for $15, $16, or should I modify this for refilling? Now, it helps if you have two sets of cartridges. And we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm going to tell you of a source that I have on my video descriptions that sells already pre-modified sets of cartridges for only $60 on eBay. They're already professionally modified and flushed, by the way, so that they are nice and clean and ready to accept whatever choice inks you choose to load into them. I, of course, recommend Precisioncolors Signature Edition inks, which are as good as OEM. In fact, as we know right now, a little bit better. The Pro-200 improved their inks. PC already did that improvement a while ago. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, I think I've situated myself okay here. If you take it upon yourself to perform this modification, you have to do it correctly, okay? You must. Either that or just buy the set already modified, and that's a huge headache that you don't have to deal with. But again, if you buy that set, you will have your own original cartridges that you can experiment with later on. At least you will have that second set ready to refill. Now, the first thing that you need to do right here is situated the so-called factory fill hole, which contains a little ball made out of plastic. Now let me shine a light behind this so maybe you can see what that looks like. You can see a little cylindrical protrusion going inside the cartridge. Inside there is a ball. You have to remove that. Some people will just drill a hole next to it, okay, but that doesn't give you enough so-called surface area for that plug to seal correctly. And that's what we're going to be discussing. So you're going to take an X-Acto blade, but if you have number 11 scalpel blades, which is what I use, I will score around that depression. You can see the depression visually. You score around it, and with a pair of tweezers, you remove that plastic. Now you're going to see the ball, okay? You know what I use? I use a drywall screw, a small one. I screw it into the ball. A couple of threads is all it takes. They're very pointy and perfect for this operation. You screw it into the ball and then lever that ball off. It comes right off. And what you end up with is that cylindrical opening. Basically, it's like a cup with a little hole underneath, and the bottom of the cup is spherical. And it holds that ball in place, okay? You need to drill that seat out. Without that seat, the ball would not stay in place. It would fall into the liquid chamber. So we're going to remove the ball. We're going to drill out the seat with a 5/32 diameter drill. I suggest you do this as carefully as you can and with a brand spanking new drill, because you need a drill that is very, very sharp. Do not create an oblong hole, please. The 5/32 drill has been proven to work with the currently available plugs that we are using for this type of operation. So be aware of that. Not larger than 5/32 and not smaller. All right, so we're going to drill that hole out, and that will allow us then to insert a plug. You can use either the regular white plugs that have no tab. You need some good fingernails for that to remove them, or the ones with tabs on them. That's what I'm going to be using for this demonstration. Let me pop this in. So when you insert that plug, you notice that it kind of stops going, doesn't really go beyond that very easily. That's because that's the seat. That's where the seat is located. And you drilled it out to 530 seconds. And 530 seconds happens to be smaller than the diameter of this plug. So I'm going to shine the light through it. And I think you should be able to see when I force it right through that hole, and it then re-expands beyond that hole. That's what you want to achieve. That will give you a perfect seal, okay? Why do you want this seal? Well, remember, this chamber contains liquid ink. That liquid ink feeds the sponge. As you create a deficit by printing, ink exits the sponge side and it is immediately replenished. There is a small opening at the bottom of this chamber that then feeds ink into the sponge and maintains the correct saturation point that you need for consistent ink flow. Remember, you just traumatized this cartridge. It no longer has the original hydraulic properties of an untampered one, but we can do the job still. Don't worry. We can still print with it. It still performs at least 90% efficiency, which is more than we really need for the majority of our images or print jobs. So 5/32 inch, very, very accurate hole that will allow the plug to seal perfectly. Why is that important? Well, like I said, let me demonstrate what's going on here. So assume that this straw is the liquid chamber. And my finger is going to then act as the plug. I just let it absorb some water. I plug the top, okay? I lift it. Look, no ink or water unless I squeeze it. Pours out. You see that? It can just sit there all day long. It'll probably dry before it pours out. That is surface tension working. And that's exactly what's happening with the cartridge. The minute that plug is not sealing correctly, because you drilled that hole badly, this is what happens. Not that fast, but slowly but surely. You will drain out your filled chamber. You perform the refilling process. You load it. You reset the chip, of course. You get a full indication on your driver that say magenta is now full. Levels are full. But tomorrow morning when you come back, you have no ink in your cartridge. And that's because it drained out. And now you're panicking. And you will not know that until you try to print something. Whatever requires magenta, you will have lots of streaks. In other words, blank. You will not have any ink because there is no more ink. It drained out because of that. The plug was not sealing correctly. Be aware that these plugs are cylindrical, parallel. There are some tapered plugs being sold in Europe that claim that you don't have to drill out that seat. Baloney, okay? They are tapered. The minute they become wet, they just slip right out, okay? There's nothing to keep them sealed. There is no force. There's no mechanical force keeping them sealed. The way these remain sealed is that you compress it beyond that 5/32 inch diameter hole you drilled out on the seat. The seat already has a little bit of a hole. We're simply enlarging it to allow that plug to compress, pass through, and re-expand. And guess what? It's sealing perfectly. Okay, so what to do? What to do if you get in the situation where your cartridge is leaking? You take it out, fill it with ink, put the plug on it, you put it over a cup, and it is dripping, dripping, dripping. It should not drip. As long as that plug is sealing, you should not have any ink coming out. Only if you remove the plug. That will cause a steady drip. And if that plug is not sealing, guess what? It's going to steadily drain into your printhead. Okay? We don't want that, right? Because the next morning you think you have ink and you try to print something. In fact, you tested it last night and it was perfect. This morning it's not, it's empty. All right, so what can we do immediately to resolve this? Because at that point, no plug is going to resolve that issue for you. Well, we can use a little bit of this tacky stuff that they use in museums. You can then maybe make a little plug and stick it in there like that. This is just temporary, folks. This might get you going for the day until you're able to get another cartridge and start all over again. That's why I recommend that you should have a second set of professionally modified cartridges in case this is your first go at performing this operation. You've never done it before. You're going to probably mess it up, very likely. So if you don't have any of this, what I recommend, you go to your local home center and buy some aluminum duct tape. You can get it from Amazon. This stuff is used to seal your ductwork in your house between the pieces. Attach it to the side, to the top, and down. Put a little tab on it if you want to. This stuff is tenacious. Seal the heck out of it with your finger. Okay? Like so. You can now see that I have literally depressed a little bit of a cylindrical or circular depression on the top. Believe me, this cartridge is not going to leak at this point. But make sure you replace it as soon as possible. This will get you going in case of an emergency. And you have no other recourse because you don't have a replacement cartridge. This will save your hide, okay? And of course, will save your print head. Because if you start printing without ink and you walk away and you print 10 images and you haven't really paid attention, you're going to fry that channel that's not getting any ink, because ink is what keeps that channel cool, or at least at the correct operating temperature. You really need to be very, very cognizant of this fact. Ink is used to cool the printhead, okay? Not only to print, but it acts as a printhead cleaner. Yeah, I know, that's horrible, isn't it? And also a printhead coolant. All right, so that is it. Make sure that you, at least before you consider refilling, buy yourself a set of cartridges already modified for refilling. They come flush and they come loaded with these types of clips. You need to have this type of clip, and you need to have at least either this type of plug. These are easier to remove because they do have a tab and they are color coded, or get these as well. Both of them will work, but I prefer these, okay? So that is it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's one of those problems that will crop up, I absolutely guarantee, when you're beginning to refill the cartridges for the Pro-100 or even the Pro-200 that just came out. We can do those as well. The only problem is, as I have stated prior, is that they are opaque and you do not see how your ink is being absorbed into your sponge. But we can get away with it by using these CLI-42 cartridges. Simply remove this chip and install the other chip on it, and then disable monitoring when that cartridge reaches empty. In other words, when the chip says I'm empty, you press that stop button, 5 seconds, make sure you have ink in it. Make sure you have already refilled it prior to that. Don't worry, it'll be full, but the chip doesn't know that. So it will reach empty, you still have ink, and it tells you you're empty. Stops printing. Press that stop button, 5 seconds. It will allow you to continue printing from now on, and you can then manually refill those cartridges without ever having to reset that chip. We're going to talk about that. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but that is a possible solution for those of you who have a Pro-200 and insist on continuing to refill. Okay, that's one option. It's not as simple as the Pro-100. We can just reset, refill, and continue printing as if we had original cartridges loaded from the store, if you will. All right, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. As always, happy printing, happy refilling, and be careful when you modify these cartridges. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.